Hello, my name is Juliana Crossett, and I'm a second-year occupational therapy student at the University of Tennessee Health Science Center in Memphis, and this is my in-service presentation podcast for professional development. So here are our learning objectives. We are going to discuss the importance of professional development in the profession of occupational therapy, explain how listening to different podcasts can enhance different facets of occupational therapy, and discuss different podcasts that can improve upon our professional development and OT identity. What is professional development? In terms of OT, AOTA has defined continued professional development as a self-directed, reflective process of lifelong learning aimed at maintaining practitioner competence, ensuring client safety and quality outcomes, enhancing or expanding professional practice, and reaching career goals. Professional development is vital to our beloved profession and fosters growth and availability of high-quality occupational therapy services. But how do we tackle professional development? AOTA recommends that a structured plan for each occupational therapy practitioner's continued professional development is necessary for the advancement of the profession and practitioners themselves, and is equally important to the clients they serve. When I was thinking about how I would improve upon my own professional development, especially in terms of podcasts, 5 main topics came to mind. These topics are taking a client-centered approach, improving upon our cultural competence, learning about illness and injury, researching other disciplines, and being OT specific. So I created an infographic to kind of help us along in researching podcasts, and I attached it on Blackboard, and it's also here, but it's kind of small. So I'll kind of just go through it real fast. The first topic deals with using the client-centered approach, meaning when looking for podcasts, I want you to think about people. Don't just dive into podcasts about illness, disease, injuries, etc. Ask yourself what makes a person a person. Search for podcasts with human stories, beliefs, and perspectives, and get into your future client's point of view. The next topic I focused on was cultural competence. We as people always have room for improvement, and as future healthcare providers, we'll meet individuals from all walks of life in our practice. Learn about people with cultures different from your own. Use podcasts to examine yourself and see what you can do better to provide the best level of treatment for your clients. The next topic is learning about illness and injury. This isn't just looking for podcasts about strokes, brain injuries, etc., which I do still think are important. But in addition to that, it's learning about the effects of living with chronic disease has on a person's mental health, or perhaps the road to recovery and what that looks like for different people. The next topic is researching other disciplines. I know OT is the best, but the chances are we will one day be working with other disciplines in our future practice on an interdisciplinary team. We need to take this time to learn about what PTs, speech therapists, nurses, respiratory therapists, etc. bring to the table and gain more respect and insight to their profession. And finally, of course, I saved the best for last. This is getting OT specific and using podcasts to learn about different practice settings, intervention ideas, emerging niche areas, and evidence-based practice. I think this also would be a really good time to, as we are about to go on fieldworks, to maybe research podcasts about the settings that you will be going into. So here's Lucille Ball. She's in an old-time radio show, and I'm going to go over to my Weebly and give us some podcast recommendations. So if you just hit the More tab on my Weebly, and podcast recommendations will come underneath that. And I've compiled a list of just all of these podcasts. There's a lot. I kind of went a little bit crazy. And I've organized them by category and then provided a short descriptor to kind of hopefully pique your interest and see what you may be interested in listening to. If this does seem like a lot, don't worry. I'm going to go through a SparkNotes version of different podcasts from each topic area and that I think are really relevant to us and that I think will be really good. I think they'll all be really good, but these kind of stood out to me. So let me go back to my PowerPoint. So under the Client Center tab, the podcast that really interested me was Unlocking Us by Brene Brown. our program is all about Brene Brown, and I've heard nothing good but good things about this podcast. Brene Brown's podcast, as she states, will include conversations with the people who are teaching me, challenging me, confusing me, or maybe even ticking me off a little. I'll also have direct conversations with you about what I'm learning from new research, and we'll do some episodes dedicated to answering your questions. We don't have to do life alone. We were never meant to. I think that's beautiful. The episode I will be tuning into. So I'm going to give you a specific episode that I have queued and ready for whenever I go on my next commute or road trip. I don't know when that'll be, but just or maybe when I'm just cleaning around the house. I like to listen to podcasts when I'm cleaning. So the episode I'm tuning into is Permission to Feel. Dr. Mark Brackett has dedicated his life to studying emotions and to teaching us what he's learning. In this episode, we talk about how emotional literacy, being able to recognize, name, and understand our feelings, affects everything from learning, decision-making, and creativity to relationships, health, and performance. So Kaylee Stem's in service about emotional intelligence kind of made me think about my own emotional intelligence, and I think that this podcast episode will kind of help me dive more into that and seeing, just developing that further and getting a little better with my emotions and feeling my emotions. So also this podcast has cool celebrity guests at times like Kerry Washington and Reese Witherspoon. So some great women. So I think that podcast would be a really good one to put on your list. So the next podcast I'd like to bring attention to falls under cultural competence and is Code Switch. This podcast states that Code Switch has fearless conversations about race that we've been waiting for. It's hosted by journalists of color and tackles the subject of race head on. We explore how it impacts every part of society, from politics and pop culture to history, sports, and everything in between. This podcast makes all of us part of the conversation because we're all a part of this story. So I think that's really cool. And the episode I'm turning into is Why Now White People? What's different this time? And it's just talking about, why now? Why are we all of a sudden changing, and how will we not regress and go back to how things have been in the past and to progress? So I think that's really cool and something that we should all be paying attention to right now. So the next podcast falls under the illness and injury tab, and I wanted to highlight it because it's kind of lighthearted. I love lighthearted podcasts, but it also provides really good information. Sawbones is uncovering the odd, weird, wrong, dumb, and just gross ways we've tried to fix people over the years by researching the historical side of medicine. It's definitely a fan favorite for anyone who needs a good laugh and can appreciate a fun attempt to show you how we got to our current approach of modern medicine. So it kind of goes into just weird, old-timey medicine that, people just had some weird ideas about medicine in the old days whenever there wasn't much research, and then just kind of caveats to how we actually treat people now. And they have had a lot of recent episodes talking about more modern things that are happening in the health world, like COVID-19. So the episode I'm tuning into is Health Media Literacy. We've been inundated by medical news in the face of COVID-19, but how is the layman supposed to make sense of all of it? How can you tell a trustworthy report from simple clickbait? So I don't know about y'all, but this has been something I've been seeing a lot lately. It's just false reports circulating on social media about things about COVID, and just, people are getting research from weird things and just weird ideals. So I think that's a good episode to possibly, promote to anyone who might be having some kind of funky ideas or things like that. But do it in a nice way. So the next podcast falls under the topic of interdisciplinary learning and is brought to us by the American Physical Therapy Association. Move Forward tells practitioner stories from the voices of actual physical therapists spanning a large range of topics from autism to the current COVID-19 pandemic. So I'm talking about COVID-19 again, I'm so sorry. But the episode I'm going to be tuning into is From Near Death to Walking Steady, a COVID-19 Survivor's Journey. So at age 39 and in good health, Brian DeCastro didn't fit the profile of someone likely to find himself on a ventilator for 2 weeks and in a life and death battle with COVID-19, and physical therapy was the key to his recovery. So I think that would be a cool episode to listen to kind of gain some respect for what PTs are doing. And I'm sure that, we like to make jokes about it, PTs, but they really do a lot. And I think that would be good to listen to. So the last podcast, we are kind of familiar with it. We listened to it a lot as supplemental material in several of our classes in OT school. And the OT schoolhouse takes a focus in the areas of school-based occupational therapy most frequently discussed by therapists, while also exploring new practice strategies and earning professional development for certification renewal. The episode I'm turning into is how teachers and OTs perceive school-based OT. Have you ever felt unappreciated by the teachers at your school? Well, listen to the episode to learn what a small research study has to say about the ways teachers and OTs perceive occupational therapy and therapists in the school. This one is on my list for sure because I will be going on a school-based fieldwork at Madonna Learning Center this September. So I definitely need to be tuning into this podcast and just hearing these stories. So now that I've gone through these podcasts, I'd like you to hop over and complete my Padlet. It's got the prompt that after exploring the provided podcast, whether that be on my Weebly page or the ones I just went through, which topic interests you the most and why. So you can scan this QR code, or there's a link in Blackboard that you can press. So just pause this video here and do that. Okay, so like I said, I know that was a lot of podcasts, and you're over here thinking, wow, I am never going to listen to any of those or all of those. This girl is crazy. Well, I get that. I'm not saying listen to these by the end of this week or month or even year, but if you want, just open your podcast app on your phone or Spotify or Stitcher. There's a lot of different podcasts are pretty universal and accessible, and just hit a follow button or a Q button, like an episode, just for the next time you find yourself, like I said, on a commute. I think we'll be going to school some between here and the end of our didactic, so maybe then, or your next road trip, as long as you're being safe on your next road trip, or even your next cleaning session. Like I said, I love to listen to podcasts while I clean. I feel like I'm doing so much. So I promise you will get something out of listening to these. So that is the end of my in-service. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope you've gotten something out of it listening about these podcasts, and I hope that you really will take the time to listen to some of these. Like I've said, I really think that it'll be beneficial to us. And if you don't mind, please take my survey. It's short and sweet, and it'll really help me out. And I've got another QR code here, and I believe it'll be linked on Blackboard. So thank you. And here are my references, all the podcasts.